After a heated argument with his parents, Michael Carter left his childhood home in Ravenswood, a small town in Pennsylvania. Filled with resentment, he moved to another country, cutting off all contact. For 20 years, he buried himself in work, never once reaching out to his aging parents. But as time passed, guilt gnawed at him, and he decided to return home. One cold autumn evening, Michael arrived at his old neighborhood. The once vibrant street now looked abandoned, the houses lifeless, their windows like hollow eyes watching him. He reached his parents' house, a large Victorian-style structure that now seemed weathered by time. The paint had peeled off, the front yard was overgrown with weeds, and the air around it felt thick with an eerie silence. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time, but still, silence. Just as he turned away, the door creaked open on its own. A chill ran down his spine. Cautiously, he stepped inside. The interior was a nightmare. Dust coated every surface, cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and a musty smell filled the air. The house had been left untouched for years, yet Michael could feel a strange presence, as if unseen eyes were watching him. He walked through the darkened halls, his footsteps echoing through the empty house until he reached the staircase. Taking a deep breath, he climbed up to the bedroom where his parents used to sleep. To his shock, they were there. His father, Robert Carter, lay frail and motionless on the bed, his sunken eyes staring at the ceiling. His mother, Margaret, sat on a chair beside him, her hands trembling as she wiped her tears. Both looked like mere shadows of their former selves, old, weak, and lifeless. "Michael?" his mother whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears welled up in his eyes as he knelt before them. He held their hands, cold and weak, and apologized for leaving them alone all these years. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with sorrow. That night, as he lay in his childhood bedroom, he could hear whispers in the dark. The creaking of the wooden floor echoed through the halls, even though no one was supposed to be walking. Then, at midnight, he went downstairs to get a glass of water. As he reached the kitchen, a movement outside the window caught his eye. His heart pounded as he saw a shadowy figure standing in the yard, peering inside. The figure stood unnaturally still, its face obscured by darkness. Michael froze, unable to move. Then, suddenly, the figure disappeared. From that night on, the nightmares began. He would hear knocking at the door, but when he checked, no one was there. He saw dark shapes moving down the hallway, and at times he could hear heavy breathing behind him. One evening, he decided to go out for a drive to clear his mind. As he crossed a bridge just outside town, he spotted two children, a boy and a girl, standing by the railing, looking down at the water below. Something about them felt off. Concerned, he pulled over and approached them. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" he asked. The little girl, pale and wide-eyed, turned to him and whispered, "We're looking for them. They were taken." Michael frowned. "Taken? By who?" The boy pointed down toward the river. Michael followed their gaze and gasped. In the moonlight, he could see skeletal remains and decayed bodies submerged in the murky water. His stomach turned as he realized the water was filled with corpses. He turned back to the children, but they were gone. Panicked, he rushed back to his car and drove home, his mind racing. As he reached his house, an unnatural silence filled the air. The front door was wide open. Inside, everything was exactly as he had left it, except for one thing. His parents were gone. Frantic, he searched every room, calling out their names, but there was no trace of them. He sat on the floor, shaking, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., he saw it again, the shadowy figure outside the window, staring in. This time, he ran outside and grabbed the figure by the arm. "Who are you? Why are you watching me?" he shouted. The man, an elderly resident of Ravenswood, looked at Michael with sorrowful eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "This house, It's cursed. Michael's breath hitched. What do you mean? The old man sighed. Years ago, a massacre happened in this town. A group of raiders came and slaughtered hundreds of people. Your parents were among them. This house has been abandoned ever since. I saw you come back, and I tried to protect you, but you've been living with ghosts. Michael's blood ran cold. His mind refused to accept it, but deep inside, he knew it was true. His parents had never been there. He had been speaking to their lingering spirits. The shadows in the house, the whispers in the dark, the figures at the window. As dawn broke, they were never meant to let him go. And fled Ravenswood, leaving the haunted house behind. But no matter how far he went, he could still feel them watching, waiting for his return.